Hey, hey, under the scope fans. We're getting ready to get started. I'm excited. Get this party moving. I'm so excited, say I can't even speak. This is how I fell on the back. This is the background before I hit the floor with everyone else. Because when they go under the scope, I go under the scope. And right now, I'm like, oh, on the inside. Can't wait to hear Kayla Newbern talk about education and mental health. See you soon. Welcome, everybody. It's Saturday. It's Under the Scope. I am your host, Kimberlon B. I'm a licensed professional counselor in Phoenix, Arizona. Been in the field for about as long as my grandchildren been alive. No, I'm joking. I've been in the field for about 9 years, and I've worked with co-occurring conditions. That's people that's dealing with substance abuse, whether it's active or in recovery, and they're also dealing with general mental health. So I just work with the combo platter to teach them strategies to get them through. Um, I also work with domestic violence survivors. It's really near and dear to my heart because how many people know that that's just as traumatic as any other type of traumas that we think, murders or anything else. So let me tell you a little bit about Under the Scope, and then I want to get out of the way because we have an awesome guest. Under the Scope is a scopecast, and I decided to make this come alive because I wanted to spread the word about the importance of mental health. And of course, I can't do it alone. It's too many places to go to. So I reached out to people and invited special guests with their knowledge, skills, and talents, and most importantly, their passion for mental health awareness. And we're talking about in all areas of life. So I'm really excited. So under the scope, little disclaimer, it's for informational, conversational, and educational purposes, and it does not substitute getting a higher level of care. And so this is definitely a non-judgment judgment zone. So we like people to say what they want to say, how they want to say it, as long as it's not disrespectful to any other guest, or hey, I'm still letting people in, y'all, or as long as it's not disrespectful to the guest or even the speaker on the show. So I am going to do a quick intro and I'm going to step out of the way because today's guest speaker, she already tried to knock me off in the background and wanted to steal my thunder. So coming under the scope, and she's not new to Under the Scope. This is her second time back, and it's Kayla Newbern, and I'm excited that she's here today because she's talking about education and mental health. If we didn't know that this was an issue before, let's go back to 2020 when some of you all had to start teaching your kids at home. That's when you had a mad respect for teachers, right? I mean, still. And then you was an IT person, and then the grades and everything else. But I brought Kayla back on the show. And as a matter of fact, she wanted to come on the show to talk about not only did everything have to change like that, but what if you have someone that has special needs that needs to be addressed in this virtual setting, in this pandemic, in this racial tension, under all of this. So you put all of that together and you talk about not only your mental health, but the mental health of children. So I was glad that Kayla came on the show, and a little bit about her. She's my second daughter and I love her so, and I'm so proud of her. All right, but I'm not going to take it easy on her on this platform. Just know. All right, without further ado, I want to introduce the conductor for this train. We're about to get moving. Coming under the scope is special guest, Kayla Newbern. Oh, one more thing before you come. Sorry. Anybody have any questions, comments, or anything? You can utilize the chat. You can utilize the raise hand unless Kayla asks for participation in between. But at the end, we'll make sure we save time to take Miss Newbern under the scope. All right, so now I'm out the way.
Hello, everyone. Let me go ahead and get my PowerPoint pulled up because it is going to start with like my introduction, and then we'll get right into the purpose of why we're here. All right, here we go. All right, can everyone see that okay?
I
The
can see it.
PowerPoint? Okay. So the topic today is the complicated relationship between education and mental health. And once I delve into that more, you'll understand why I think personally it's very, very complicated. So, a little bit about me. So, this is a lot. I'll just kind of go through it there. I was a high school special education math teacher for 8 years and one of Arizona's largest school districts. I currently serve multiple families in the capacity of educational consultant, and I'm also CEO of Common Denominators University. It is a math education program that specializes in helping students who are one or more grade levels behind to learn the skills they need to solve problems on their own. One of the reasons why I really went back into this and really did it full time is because of COVID and the fact that a lot of students and families weren't getting the support that they needed with their children at home. So I rebranded and I relaunched, and it's been nothing but success ever since. So a little bit about that. I have a bachelor's degree in elementary education, grades 1 through 8. And then I also have it's actually a dual degree. So I have a special education degree in grades K through 12. And additionally, I have a master's in education degree in curriculum and instruction. And my emphasis with that is applied behavior analysis, which is a mindset that influences like behavior therapy, behavior coaching services, primarily for students with autism, but it's proved to be beneficial with all students. And with all of that, this is my 12th year. So I have 12 combined years of working with both neurodivergent. So that's what we would consider typical children. I mean, neurodivergent is students that have disabilities, and then also neurotypical children. So those are what we would consider typically developing students. And I've worked with students all the way from elementary up to middle school and high school as well. All right. So that's me Kayla Newbern, the professional. Now here's my story. I'm a Black femme, I'm a wife, I'm a serial entrepreneur, and I say that because I do have multiple businesses right now. I'm a mother of 4 children. I'm a domestic violence survivor, and 2 of my children have social and behavioral disabilities. I currently live in Phoenix, Arizona, by way of Austin, Texas, and I've lived in the Valley for it'll be 14 years in August. I enjoy hiking and exercising. I love painting. I love upscale dining, traveling, singing, dancing, reading, shopping, partaking in self-care, self-maintenance. So like getting my facials done, getting my nails done, things like that. And I also love engaging in what I would consider social commentary about like current events and things that are going on. I love engaging in that type of dialogue. So that's something that I really, really value. So that's my story. Now we're going to get right into it with some information so that those of you who don't really know about the complicated relationship between education and mental health, now you'll see why that's such an issue or why that relationship is so complicated. So all this information is from the CDC, the Center for Disease Control. The 3 most common mental disorders that can be diagnosed in childhood are ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, anxiety, depression, and also behavior disorders. So that includes autism, ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, and also conduct disorder. So I recently learned this. The difference between oppositional defiant disorder and conduct disorder is children that have ODD are typically only defensive and resistant to authority from people that they know, whereas conduct disorders, it can be from anyone, police officers, anyone, any adult or authority figure in their life. So 1 in 6 US children ages 2 to age 8 have a diagnosed mental, behavioral, or developmental disorder. And then last of all, excuse me, diagnosis of depression and anxiety are more common with increased age. So as children progress in years, there is a positive correlation between their age and depression and anxiety manifesting. Now, this is specifically, education and mental health. Only 40% of students with emotional, behavioral, and mental health disorders graduate from high school, compared to the national average of 76%. More than 77,000 children in special education receive suspensions or expulsions for more than 10 cumulative days in a year. And then on average, only 1/4 of children in need of mental health services get the help that they need. So as we can see, there's a lot of students who are being diagnosed. There's also that population of students who are undiagnosed. But of the ones that are diagnosed, only 1 out of 4 of them are really, really getting the services and supports that they need. Now, this is specifically about Black children. Black children have less access to mental health services and are less likely to receive needed care. So again, of all the children who require that extensive level of support and those aligned services, we're looking at a severe disadvantage amongst Black children even receiving access to those services. And Black children in treatment often receive a poorer quality of mental health care. So not only are we not receiving those services at all or being informed of what services are available to us, the quality of care that we get is overall collectively not up to par. And also, Black children are underrepresented in mental health research. So when they're researching interventions that work for disabilities, we're not included. So I can understand the sentiment, and myself being a Black mom and having multiple children who have disabilities, I definitely, that resonates with me, the fact that, I'll get into that. I'm going there.
So let me throw something in real fast. So
Yes.
it's already a shortage. Only
Yes.
1/4 of the children in need of mental health care get the help they need. And that's significantly worse
Yes.
for Black children.
For Black children, absolutely. And I will get into, when I get into my personal story about that, you will see, I'll kind of go more into that, because this happens to so many families. It's like a plague. That in and of itself is another layer that us as Black people have to deal with. Even when we want them, or when we recognize that we have a problem and we seek out that care, we're denied care, we're denied access. And when we do, if we do happen to get it, it's less than what we need. So where does this leave us? We are the best advocates for our children, and we are the only advocates for our children. That's really what it boils down to. If we don't make it happen for our kids, it will not happen. The odds are already stacked against us. So we have to be that voice. We have to be that advocate for our kids in order to get the services and supports that they need in order to mitigate or lessen the impact of their disabilities on their education. Tips. Now that you know this information, bring up these statistics when you're talking with mental health and education professionals. One statistic that I ran across is that Black girls in particular are underdiagnosed for autism. So when I was calling mental health professionals in order to get my AFAB son, Jace, AFAB is assigned female at birth. When I was calling around to get my AFAB son diagnosed, I said this to them. You know, like I said, I'll get into this more. This is actually its own beast, but this is something that I've experienced personally. And this is what has helped me to bring up this information, how Black children are underdiagnosed, how the care that we get is subpar. The second tip that I have is, if the school wants to diagnose your child, let them. I know a lot of us grew up in religious households and we were told to pray things away. We were told that, oh, they're just bad, you know, you need to whoop them or whatever the situation is. But I'm saying to you, If the school comes to you and says, hey, your child has ADHD or your child has autism, or we suspect that, can we go forward with this evaluation to confirm it? Let them. And I say that because, especially with Black children in particular, they want to label our children angry. They want to label our children hurt. They want to label our children everything but the label that they need in order to get the access to the services that they need. So when your child has that label, or grandchild has that label, it protects them. And what I mean by that is they are not allowed legally. A school cannot deny access. Once you have that label, the school has to provide access to you. Once you have that label, the school cannot say, we're going to suspend you for the rest of the year. No, there are certain processes and procedures in place to prevent that, because again, that label is that protection for our kids. Thirdly, reach out to an educational consultant. So that's me, or a parent advocate when you are open and ready to help. It is very difficult for a lot of people, especially in the Black community, to accept when the child is given a label. That's hard. We want our kids to be the best. And a lot of people, there's a negative stigma attached to having a mental health disorder. When you're open and ready to help, reach out. There are organizations in place that you can reach out to. There are people like me that you can reach out to help you to get what you need for your child. Okay. Now, like I shared earlier, I wanted to share my journey, and it's literally from hospital to healing. The healing did not take place at the hospital. I'll just say that. But this is my own personal experience with everything that I'm sharing with you today. So what I'm sharing with you is not something that I read about or heard about. This was something that happened with me personally that I'm wanting to share to prevent this from happening, hopefully prevent this from happening with other people of other families. So I want to tell you a little bit about Jace. Jace is the subject of this story. Jace is an 8-year-old AFAB transgender boy. What that means is when Jace was born, Jace was labeled a female, a girl. Jace is transgender, and that Jace now identifies, or the identity of boy resonates more with Jace. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. Jace was born Sarai. Sarai is now Jace. Okay, I think we're good. So Jace is a transgender boy who is currently diagnosed with ADHD, anxiety, and DMDD. I talked about ADHD earlier. I talked about anxiety. DMDD stands for disruptive mood dysregulation disorder. And disruptive mood dysregulation disorder simply means children that are diagnosed with this, the behavior that they exhibit, the behavior that they show doesn't match the circumstance. So for example, somebody could accidentally drop Jace's juice. And instead of Jace saying, hey, you dropped my juice, like a typical normal response that we would expect, Jace might go punch them, or Jace might throw something at them. So again, the behavior doesn't match the circumstance. Jace has been improperly diagnosed since June 2019. Jace is currently in 2nd grade. I've been fighting to have Jace diagnosed with autism since June 2019. So since they were in kindergarten. Okay. I told myself I wasn't going to get choked up on this part because this part is really, really hard to discuss. But again, I want to be fully transparent. And I want you to know that, again, this is something that I went through myself personally. And I'm hoping that through my very unfortunate experience, that again, I prevent this from happening to someone else. So Jace was, here we go. Jace was hospitalized. And what I mean by hospitalized is inpatient in the I can't even say it today, psychiatric ward, January 27th through February 4th. So a week, for extremely severe danger to self and danger to others behavior. Jace pulled the knife on me that I had to wrestle from them. Jace ran outside and almost got hit by a vehicle. Just very, very, very severe danger to self and danger to others behaviors. I called crisis, and crisis instructed me to take Jace to the hospital at Phoenix Children's. And that's what I did. Now, what this is me again, personally, this is coming, I had to ask myself, okay, why did everything have to culminate in this? What happened in Jace's life up to this point? Because it just seemed to be that Jace reached a boiling point and just boiled over at this point. For years, because of course, Jace is Black, Jace dealt with trauma from racism. Jace is a femme child. Remember, Jace was born a girl and has had to deal with misogynoir. Misogynoir is hatred for girls, women, femme people. Classism, because for a while I was a single mom and I was on food stamps, I was on access and things like that. So we were what people would consider impoverished or poor people. Bullying from school, because Jace was different. Severe undiagnosed and untreated autism. Again, I've been fighting for that diagnosis and those services since June 2019. And also adverse childhood experiences from growing up the child of an abusive father. So earlier I mentioned to you that I am a domestic violence survivor. Jace's father was very, very physically, emotionally, financially, mentally abusive towards me. And unfortunately, Jace witnessed that. All of my kids did, but especially Jace and my oldest son, because they were the oldest ones. So all of that culminated in these intense, severe, dangerous behaviors. And Jace was hospitalized as a result. That was it was the worst experience of my life, because when I went up there it took me 3 days. It took me 3 days to stop crying. Every time I would go up there, every time after that, I got better. But it's almost like when children or when people are hospitalized inpatient, it's like a prison. There's nothing on the walls. It's just a bed. It's of course a bathroom, but there's nothing there. There's no personality there. Everybody wears the same thing, and it was really hard for me to deal with that. And I believe, and I still believe, that I made the right decision doing that. But I also felt guilty, because I'm like, why can't I get a handle? I'm a good mom. Why can't I get a handle on Jace's behavior? So I did go through some self-blame. And I did also go through self-blame because I was in an abusive marriage that I left, and I made it out alive, thank the Lord. But it was very hard to go up there and visit Jace in that state, because that's not who Jace is. If anybody has met Jace, they know that Jace is full of personality, always smiling, always happy for the most part. And it was difficult to see my child in that position. It was difficult to leave somewhere without my child when I'm not away from my kids more than 3 days at a time when I travel and stuff. But that was very difficult. Okay, so here's where we are now. Jace is scheduled to receive an autism test, an autism screening. It's called the ADOS on May 5th, 2021. So after years and years of fighting, my child is finally going to receive their screening, their diagnosis, and their services. Right now, Jace receives medication management, high needs case management, and is going to receive speech therapy, occupational therapy, behavior coaching and therapy, and also Jace currently receives individual therapy. So finally, after all this time, Jace is going to have what they need in order to mitigate the impact of the ADHD, mitigate the impact of the anxiety, mitigate the impact of autism. Finally, Jace is going to have that as of May. My 5-year-old son was diagnosed level 1 autism, ADHD, and pica on March 8th. The interesting thing about this is that overall, collectively, Black children are underdiagnosed for autism. But when you look at autism, most male children, most boys, there's more boys than girls diagnosed with autism. And I thought that was interesting, because I've been fighting for years to have Jace diagnosed. But when I mentioned to Stefan's teacher, when she and I were talking about him having a form of autism, I made him an appointment. He got into his appointment within less than a month, but I've been fighting for years for Jace. So I thought that was very interesting. He will be receiving speech therapy, occupational therapy, sensory integration therapy. Stefan is very, very, what's the word? He's very sensitive to like taking a bath, things that like we do without even thinking about it. It's really bothersome to him. Taking a bath is very difficult. Getting haircuts, very difficult. Like literally, I guess the buzz from the clippers is super uncomfortable for him. So things like that. So that type of therapy is going to help him to self-regulate, which is what we want. He's also going to receive medication management, individual therapy, because he has expressed that he's sad and depressed before. So we're going to get him into individual therapy so that he can learn some coping strategies and just talk about what he's been through. Parents think that kids don't know anything. Kids know more than what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, you have to pay attention to what your kids say, but also what they don't say. You know, what behaviors are they displaying that's difficult from their normal repertoire? What are they doing differently than what they usually do? Are their grades slipping? Are they in the house, in the bed more? So you have to pay attention to all of those things. My 10-year-old son, Jeremiah, was diagnosed with adjustment disorder, and he receives individual therapy. He was resistant. I'm just going to keep it real. Jeremiah is 10 and he was resistant to therapy, but he also recognizes that there are things that he gets really upset at that don't really require that level of getting upset. Like he slams his computer, you know, things like that. He's like, it was so funny. We had his intake and he was like, yeah, I just don't want to rage at the games anymore. So just things like that. Like, again, paying attention to behaviors that your kids are exhibiting that they don't usually do. He is also, me and Jeremiah's father, we split custody. And that was a big shift in Jeremiah's life. He went from being in my house for 9 years, right? Just with me, from now splitting time between myself and his father. And that was definitely an adjustment for him. His grades started slipping. He became more irritable. His school attendance dropped. I mean, that was a lot on a 10-year-old. We don't think about the impact of these things on our kids. So me being the type of mom that I am, I wanted to definitely be proactive so that he can learn how to work through what he's going through and have better coping skills for the future. We're also going to be receiving family and support therapy through Devereaux. For our whole family, we're going to be receiving therapy as well. So that's why my work and this journey, I've called it From Hospital to Healing, because the healing did not take place at the hospital. The healing is taking place now that Jace is getting what they need. Again, like what I shared in the beginning, I felt guilty and I blame myself for Jace being in the hospital. But when Jace came out of the hospital, in Jace's discharge paperwork, they said Jace needs speech, Jace needs OT. So now it's not just me, a parent, saying that. Now I have the backing that I need for the school to make it happen. Because as we can see, like based on the earlier statistics, the relationship is complicated because the education system, the school can either make it better for the kid, for the child, for the student, or they can make it worse. The school oftentimes can be a part of the problem. Let's be honest. Why are so many kids with disabilities being suspended from school?
Mm-hmm.
You know, why are kids sitting in classrooms not getting the support that they need? I tutor a student in New Mexico. I'm here in Arizona and I tutor the student in New Mexico. And that student sat in those classes not getting help from those teachers since the beginning, with one teacher, since the beginning of the school year. No help, no parent to school communication. So again, whatever school, whatever district, whatever system your child is a part of, they can mitigate the impact of mental illness so they can lessen the impact of their mental illness, their disorders, or they can make it worse. That's why I said the relationship between the two are very complicated, because right now I'm having my kids' schools, they go to 2 different schools. I'm having them assessed and diagnosed and serviced through their schools also. Schools don't like that. I'm a former teacher. I'm going to keep it real. Schools don't like parents who come in there knowing what they're talking about and knowing what their children need. They don't like that. Because if you go to a school and say, I want my child assessed, if you go to a school and you say, I want my child to have speech therapy, the school has to pay for it. That's why they don't like it. That's why they don't encourage it. And that's why so many kids who have severe needs are not being diagnosed, because the school is then held responsible, which is why I said earlier, if your school, your child's school wants to diagnose your child, let them, because then they're put on the hook to provide those services and supports that your child needs. Okay, I see there's a message in the chat.
I want to throw in also there. I don't know if that's a message or not, but even like she was saying about letting the school go ahead and assess and diagnose. Remember that you are their advocate. So you can, see what's going on and be involved with that. That was it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I will say from this experience, I kind of have a unique perspective because I am a former educator, specifically special educator. And I'm a mom. I am a parent. And I've seen both sides of the coin. I've seen it from a school's perspective. I've seen it from a parent's perspective. And that's why I said it's so complicated, because again, the school can make things better or they can make things worse. I've seen it both ways. And that's why it's so complicated. The relationship is evident. The relationship is there. I was alarmed when I saw that 40% of students with disabilities aren't graduating from high school. What are these schools doing for these kids that need it? What services and supports are in place for them? So this is a topic that I am very, very passionate about, because again, this is my lived experience. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me, because I want to help you. I want to help other parents who are going through this. And that's part of the reason why I started my math tutoring company, because I'm not just a math tutor who's tutoring for, just to get some Starbucks money. This is my livelihood, but also this is my passion. This is what I have, the gifts and talents and abilities. I want to give that to other families so that they don't have to deal with and endure what I went through, what my family went through.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
So everyone that comes on Under the Scope, I always ask them, what is their definition of mental health? I know you shared a lot about mental health with you, with your children, with the family. What is your definition of mental health?
So mental health to me, and my definition has changed since the last time I was here, because I've learned more. Mental health to me is about the overall well-being of mental, but also the ability to cope with everyday life. All of us, especially when we enter adulthood, we are all going to have to work. We're all going to have to pay bills. We're all going to have to, if we decide to have children, raise our children. So your mental health is your ability to manage effectively manage all of those different things. Because our kids aren't going away, our jobs aren't going away. The fact that we need to pay bills, that's not going away. So mental health is your overall well-being up here, but then also your ability to cope with everyday stressors.
I like that.
Well, thank you.
Are you still using your screen?
No, I'm not. I can stop sharing now.
And, with that being said, I know everyone, we're getting ready to honestly take Kayla under the scope. So get prepared with your raised hands and, chats or whatever you want to use. But one of the things you mentioned, and I want to just ask you a little bit more about. So with the label, and I could say, because Black, I only know Black. I tell people just like that,
Right.
that it's hard for some Black parents to come to that place of that there's something, I'm using this, wrong with my child. So besides prayer, what are other stigmas that you think exist?
Oh, so even within the overall Black community, there's a stigma that if you go get mental health support, whether that's therapy or whatever the situation is, that means that you're crazy. So that's one of the things that's another negative stigma attached to mental health. That means that you're crazy. When it's like, okay, just because I have ADHD doesn't mean that I'm crazy. It just means that I have to go about things a different way. And again, there seems to be that feeling that in our community that we can just pray away mental health. We just go to God about it. Go to God about it. Well, God created therapists. God created psychiatrists. God created psychologists. God put these people down here to help us. So you can't just, you can't just pray about it. You pray about it, then you take action in order to get what you need. I'm trying to think of other stigmas attached to that. Besides, you can just pray it away. It makes you crazy. Those are the only two I can think of right now.
Okay. All right.
Great
So
question. Thank you.
you're welcome. All right. So before I turn it over and take you under the scope, let us know where we can find you, and let us know a little bit more about Common Denominators University.
Thank you. Thank you. So you can find me on Facebook at Kayla Newbern. But I would love for you to find me on Facebook at Common Denominators University. That is the name of my math education company. Again, I specialize in helping students who are one or more grade levels behind in math. I help those students to learn the skills that they need to solve problems on their own. One of the things that I encountered when I was doing my market research and figuring out, okay, what is it that parents really want? What is it that parents really need? Parents were like, I want my child to be able to do it independently. I'm not asking for A's. I'm asking for them to be able to do it on their own. I want them to be able to solve it without needing so much assistance. And of course, that's due in part to the fact that virtual education takes place at our homes. A lot of parents are unaware about Common Core math and different things like that. They're unaware of how new math is being, we call it new math, how that's being taught. And if they can't do it, if you don't know it for yourself, how are you going to teach somebody else? So again, that's part of the reason why I relaunched and rebranded during this time, because a lot of parents need that extra support. And of course, an extended level of support, that's going to benefit the students as well. So there's more about that. You can find me on Instagram at CD Tutoring. You can find me on Twitter also at CD Tutoring. I try to keep it all the same so I can be easily accessible to everyone. Please reach out. Even if you don't utilize my educational consulting services or my math tutoring services, I would encourage you to please reach out to me. If you are in this situation yourself, or if you know someone who's in that situation, so that if I can't help you, if we're not a good fit for each other, I still want to be able to support you and put you in contact with the people I know who have helped me and my family. Because again, this is something that I've endured personally.
Nice. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for sharing. So everyone, we're getting ready to take Kayla Newbern under the scope. All right. So we already have a message in chat for you. It says no question today, but I just want to thank her for being brave enough to share her story around a topic that can make people uncomfortable and is taboo in communities of color.
Thank you. Thank you.
Especially to be brave and bold enough to share the story. So I know I'm getting ready to skip the person that has their hand up real fast. Question for you, and then I'll go to you, Choice. How do you think we can bridge this gap in education and mental health?
That is a wonderful, wonderful question. And I think the way to make the relationship more fruitful and more advantageous is it's going to start with, of course, changing our mindsets. Thank you. It's going to start with changing our own mindsets. A lot of people raise their children the way that they were raised. That's good, that's bad, that's indifferent. That's just it. We raise our children based on what we see. So it's about changing your own mindset about mental health. That's where it's going to start. It's going to start with us parents. It's going to start with when we're given diagnosis, when we're giving, diagnosis that we don't even necessarily agree with. That's instead of saying, no, my child doesn't have that, maybe looking at it deeper, like, you know what? That is true. My child does exhibit some of these symptoms. My child does show these same types of behaviors. So it's going to start with your mindset shifting. And it's also going to start with being vocal, being transparent like I am today. One of the things that I'm doing right now is I'm actually partnering with Autism Speaks. And I'm not a fan of Autism Speaks. I'm just going to keep it real because they've definitely done some things that are very questionable, especially me being a parent of a child with autism. I mean, multiple children with autism. But one of the things I'm doing, and one of the reasons why I'm joining that is so I can be a soundboard for families like us, families of people of color who need our voices heard. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take us shifting our mindsets, and then also using the profound and amazing voices that we have to speak up and advocate for our kids. Like I said earlier, when you go into these IEP meetings, these school meetings, or these mental health conversations, don't be afraid to say, hey, why are Black children underdiagnosed for these things? Can you explain that to me? Why is it that I'm having such a hard time? Is it because only 1 in 4 kids are actually receiving the services and supports that they need? Bring up that information. And when you become informed, inform others. That's what I've done. The more informed I become, I inform others. I help others. And sometimes it is, yes, of course, I get paid for my expertise. But again, this is something that I'm passionate about. And if you need someone to sit with you in an IEP meeting, or if you need someone to sit with you in a conversation with a therapist or an intake, please don't hesitate to reach out to me because I want to be that support that's missing. That's the piece that's missing is the support for sure.
Yes, spot on, spot on. Make our presence known in different areas. I know I wanted to be more active with mental health, even outside under the scope and outside my counseling world. And so I actually became a member at NAMI to have our presence there and to represent for us and our needs.
Yes. And what is NAMI? Can you remind us again?
National Alliance on Mental Illness.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right, Choice.
Hi, how you guys?
Hi.
The first thing I want to do is say, Kayla, thank you. Thank you for who you are. Thank you for sharing. I just love your positivity. I love your upfront, love you being upfront, all of those things. And yes, I'm going to say it.
You can
She
say
has
it.
my grandson tremendously. He was making F's. Teachers were not responding. My daughter was sending emails, was trying to make contact. So I asked her, do you need help? I don't know the school district as well, and my brain is tired. I'm just going to be real. So I asked Kayla to come in, will you help? And Kayla said yes. Now we have the founder and principal of my grandson's school on email on direct contact. We had a meeting with him. Forgive the noise in the background. That's my baby grandson. So we have the school on, we have direct contact to him now. So any teacher that is lagging or falling behind, we just contact him. So I want to thank you very much for helping us. My next one.
You're welcome.
So we were speaking about the behaviors that children have when they're in school with the teachers. And the
Yes.
teachers sending them in and out. I mean, sending them to the office constantly. So I went to a seminar at ASU regarding the school to prison pipeline. And they say that's where it started, as young as 5 years old.
Mhm.
So how could a teacher, well, and while I was at that seminar, they had said two of the students, one was homeless and one was in a domestic violence situation, because the
Mhm.
grades dropped, the attendance had dropped. So
Mhm.
how could a teacher recognize, or what do you think teachers could do in a situation like that? Because they're doing mostly the behaviorals is happening at school.
Mhm. So that's a great question. And before I answer it, I do want to say that one of the things that I recognize as a teacher is that we can't control, unfortunately, we can't control what goes on at home. But with that being said, we have a responsibility with, with the 45 minutes, 55 minutes that we are given with this child, we have a responsibility to do all that we can. So I do want to say that, because a lot of one thing I noticed too is that a lot of teachers will say, that's not my responsibility. That's not my responsibility. I can't, that's what's going on at home. When it's like, okay, the child is here with you. And oftentimes the child sees the people at school more than they see their own parents, especially if it's a single mom, working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. They probably don't see their mom at home. So teachers do have a responsibility to support that student while they're there. So I wanted to say that first before I answer the question. What teachers can do, again, like I spoke about earlier with parents, if you see that your students' grades are declining, if you see that your students' attendance is getting worse, if you're noticing these problematic behaviors, what teachers can do, number one, you always do want to make contact with home. You always want to make contact with home. Now, if you can't reach home, then there's other things that you can do. I have been to house visits where myself, the behavior coach on campus or behavior specialist on campus, the social worker on campus, we've made house visits. So we've done that before. There are things that teachers can do. What I've seen teachers do is if they can't reach the parent, then they just say, okay, not my problem. But teachers can go to social workers on campus. Teachers can meet with their principal on campus. Teachers can meet with their behavior specialists on campus and get their help in figuring out what is going on with this child. There is a reason for every single behavior that we all exhibit. If a kid is fighting around lunchtime, go and figure out why that is. Are they fighting because they're hungry and they don't know how to express it? There is always an explanation for behaviors that students and children show. It's about being invested and getting to the root of why that is. And you do that through talking with the student, talking with the parents, talking with the mental health professionals on your campus, and not accepting no for an answer. Or I
Not accept the no.
For an answer. But thank you.
You're welcome. And it's such a gift to work with the student that I'm working with in New Mexico, because that, number one, that's a completely different school system than what I'm used to. And I love the school. It's a STEM focused school. It's amazing. The student wants to be a paleontologist. Like, he is literally a scientist. That's his area of expertise. But what we found is that the teacher that was giving him the most grief was the science teacher. Like, this is what he's passionate about. Why are you not encouraging and nurturing what he's passionate about?
Mm-hmm.
So like I said earlier, teachers have a responsibility to do that. We have a responsibility to get to the root of these behaviors that our students are exhibiting. They're not just bad children. I don't even like saying bad children. Children make bad choices, just like adults make bad choices. Do we say bad adults? No, we don't. We don't say bad adults, So we don't need to call our children bad. We need to get to the root of these behaviors that they are exhibiting. For Jace personally, communication. There are ways that other typical children communicate that does not come naturally for Jace. So when Jace is angry, instead of saying, I'm angry, you know, which I mean, I don't know. I don't know about a lot of kids saying that, but some kids do, you know, Jace lashes out physically or verbally, you know? So again, there's always an explanation for the behaviors that are exhibited. Okay, I have a question.
Yeah, wait, before we go to the question real fast,
Okay.
I wanted to share what Andrea posted in the chats, another serial entrepreneur. She posted, so appreciated of your transparency. It's refreshing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, next person, Mika.
Hello, Kayla. Thank
Hi.
you. All right, thank you for sharing your story. I don't know if I necessarily have a question now because you have pretty much hit every aspect that I was going to talk about. But
Okay.
you know, if you have some feedback, then of course it's welcome. So
Okay.
first of all, let me say my son, he didn't have autism, and he was a very hyper child when he was little. And one girl I was friends with, her son was the same age as my son. And she used to try to encourage me to have him tested for ADHD, and so he could be put on meds. But that's something I chose not to do. You know, so, and yes, he received what I received when me and my sisters was growing up, was a ass whooping. So, he turned out to be a fine young man. So, but not to judge anybody else on how they raise their kids.
Right.
Okay, so I started a new job and I've been on the job for a month now. And my new manager, without going into making it a long story, I have heard her whole background of her childhood, the whole background of her dealing with her kids, and in which her daughter has Asperger syndrome.
Yeah.
And ADHD. And so she has stated, you know, that the school, you know, diagnosed her daughter, but she's been trying to get her daughter medically diagnosed so that it's on her medical file. And she's been having issues. Now, take note, my manager is white.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And so I've heard all the issues she had with her daughter, everything her daughter does, so on and so forth. Yet at the same time, looking at my manager, seeing some of the things she do in person, some of her reactions, so on and so forth, I can't help but think that she's part of the issue as well. You know, true, her daughter may have these you know, the syndromes, the ADHD, so on and so forth, but some of the habits her daughter have, she got them from her. So recently her daughter stated she wanted to, she heard voices, she felt like she wanted to hurt somebody. So, you know, she did the same. She reached out to the crisis hotline, took her to the hospital. Her daughter's been there ever since. She's been trying to get her into a behavioral health facility. She's talked to, she handles all her business at work. So this is how I know all this. So, so she has been on the phone with every healthcare worker in the area, but to hear her story go from one end of the spectrum to the other, and when she's on the phone, and I just go, and how many Black kids are not getting this help? How many Black kids are not receiving all these phone calls and concerns? You know, how many, you know, how many Black kids would have been sent home from every single facility? How many Black kids would have been able to stay at the hospital this long and get all the treatment that her daughter is receiving, you know, and so on and so forth. And nothing against her daughter, but to hear her on the phone, when she get on the phone with these healthcare workers, and she sounding like the the innocent mom,
Mhm.
but when she's not on the phone with them, she don't realize at the same time she's telling me, oh, she's getting on my nerves. I can't deal with this. She needs to go somewhere, and I've been told that when she get older, she won't be able to live on her own. She'll have to go to a mental hospital or, whatever adult
Mhm.
facility, and
Right.
nothing out of her mouth comes is, you know, I want to help my daughter do this. I want to help my daughter do that. I hear you. You're dealing with multiple
Mhm.
children, autistic children. She has one child, and
Mhm.
she's already ready to get rid of her.
Mm.
So it's kind of hard for me to sympathize with her or
Mhm.
empathize with her
Yeah.
because I hear the other side of her story. You play innocent with the healthcare workers because you're trying to get them to play in your favor because you don't want your daughter at home. You want a break from your daughter
Mhm.
versus actually help your daughter.
Mhm.
And there was a time, she herself, I diagnosed her myself as being bipolar.
Mhm.
And I say that because, not really to be funny, but I say that because something as simple as if the printer paper jams, she
Mhm.
start having a fit.
Mm.
And or when her daughter will call her on the phone, she's instantly going off on her daughter versus being patient with her daughter.
Mm.
And so since her daughter has been away from her, her daughter has X amount of time to call, so on and so forth. So one day, this is gonna be the last of them. So one day, her daughter, she was telling me her daughter called her, and her daughter was saying she's ready to come home, so on and so forth. I credit her for not giving in to her daughter coming home.
Mhm.
But she started telling her daughter, look, if you're gonna start making me feel bad, then I'm gonna hang up. Just you can't leave. And I'm just like, and so she said she hung up in her daughter's face. And I'm like, how are you helping your daughter?
Mhm.
You're making the situation worse. It's natural for her to want to come home. She
Right.
knows she needs help. She wants the help, but yet at the same time, she misses her family. And
Right.
so she asked me, so did you think I was wrong? Ha ha ha. I said yes. And I left it at that. I don't
Mhm.
need to give you details. By
Right.
the time she talked to the next healthcare worker, she was trying to explain to her what happened and justify why she did it. Like, and then by the time she talked to her daughter again, her whole attitude had changed. But yeah, you're the problem.
Yeah. And one thing that I have come to realize, and that's through my experience as both an educator and then also even as a math tutor, I work with parents, right? And oftentimes the parents can definitely be part of the problem. I mean, even in my own children's personal experience, their dad was abusive towards me. He's part of the problem. The trauma that he inflicted on our family is definitely part of the problem. And it seems like in that situation, she's just refusing to take responsibility for the part that she's playing into it, which is going to not only negatively impact her daughter's behavior, but then also her perception of her, of
Yes.
her perception of her mother. Because again, kids know and remember a lot more than we give them credit for. So I wouldn't be surprised if in the future that relationship is very strained. And my initial reaction is I want to jump up out of this chair because, again, like you pointed out earlier, our kids don't get the services and supports that they need. They don't get them. And then you have somebody who is getting them and has services and supports at their disposal and they are taking advantage of them. That
Yes.
is very infuriating for
Yes.
sure. Thank you
Yes.
for sharing that. Thank you for
You're
sharing
welcome.
I
You're
want
welcome.
I wanted to throw in and piggyback off of Mika, where she said that we grew up and all got that extra love.
that. Yeah, right.
um, and I think the way that we would actually know, because, like we said, it seemed like it could be okay and it can be corrected with discipline. But if we see that there's a pattern and it's starting to interfere with day-to-day activities, then that's probably like, okay, this may be also something that I need to explore even further.
Absolutely. Thank you for pointing that out too, because when teachers and people who are trained to recognize behaviors, that's what they're going to look for? They're going to look for those patterns. So again, if you as a teacher or as a parent or grandparent, if you see these behaviors being exhibited, and like, you know, like my mom said, on a daily basis, hourly basis, or whatever it is, that's definitely a problem. That's not just, oh, they're just being bad because they're bored. There's definitely something else going on. And it's about getting to the root of that for sure. And I used to, back in the day, of course, before I learned what I learned, I did used to spank my kids. And they were just like, what is this? Like, what are we doing here? Here, I'll hand you the belt because I don't care, you know? So physical discipline might work for some kids, but for kids who have those significant disabilities, they don't recognize the connection between their behavior and what they're doing because they're exhibiting the behavior to get something else. So there's that disconnect there. So like, again, like, as you pointed out earlier, it worked for your son, Mika, but for kids who are on the spectrum, kids who, you know, have different behavioral, mental, emotional disabilities, that's not going to get it. There has to be something else in place. And it is hard. It's hard. When Jace is going off, we call it in the zone. That's what everyone says. That's how me and the kids, we term it. That's the words that we use in our family, because I don't like the term meltdown. That just has a negative connotation to me. So I say in the zone. It is extremely difficult. There are times where I have to physically restrain Jace. And, you know, just like with the Hulk, when the Hulk gets mad, the Hulk gets stronger. That happens with Jace too, you know, and it's really, really hard to not lean back into spanking when that was something that I experienced growing up, but then also something that I did prior. But again, that's not what Jace wants. That's not what Jace needs. Jace needs something more than that. So like in terms of consequences and discipline, you know, I take away toys, we do timeouts. One of the things with kids with autism is that they have a really, really hard time engaging in play with other students. So with other children. So one thing that I do that really works with Jace is we'll all be doing a family activity or something. And if Jace is not, you know, demonstrating appropriate behavior at that time, they'll be removed from that activity. They'll be removed from that opportunity. And that has been far more impactful than, you know, spanking in the past. So, I mean, the more that we learn, the better we're able to approach things. Again, like you, Mika, I don't judge parents. I don't, because parenting is very hard. And when we have children, we don't anticipate these behaviors. I would not have seen autism and pica coming. I would not have seen ADHD, DMDD coming, you know? So I think it's important for us as we learn more to also, you know, develop and change our mindsets, like I said earlier. Yes, ma'am, Choice.
What is pica?
So pica is the eating of non-food items. So Stefan was diagnosed pica because he eats string.
Okay.
Literally one day before daycare, he got sick and he started like heaving, like he was going to vomit. He threw up a ball of string that was about that big.
Wow.
So
Okay.
he eats non-food items. I have to watch him with blankets. You know how blankets have little strings? I have to watch him. I also have to watch him with like the stuffing from pillows. He like opened up the stuffing on the pillow and he was eating that. And I haven't done this yet, but one of the things I'm going to do is do what is called mineral testing, where you see like if the child is deficient in protein or iron or, you know, things like that, to try to figure out why they're eating what they're eating. In the past, that has not been the case. So I am going to have him retest it now to figure out where that's coming from, because string it's not very tasty. I don't know why you want to eat that.
It's a texture thing.
Yeah. And Jace has exhibited that too with like crayons and erasers. Right now, one of the things we did as a result of this whole experience, is we have 24-hour surveillance in our house now. So even when I'm away, there's an app that's connected to the camera. I can still view everything that's going on because Jace cannot be left unattended. Like the only time that me and my husband go to bed is when we know Jace is sleep, you know, that's the only time. And that's really difficult, you know, because in addition to being a mom, I'm a wife, you know, I have a husband. We need to be able to do things together that you know, wives and husbands do. So,
Right?
so I mean, it is very, look at me laughing. Yeah. So it is very difficult to balance that out, you know, still making sure our relationship is kept together too. There is an extreme amount of divorce rate when there are children with disabilities, because it does put a lot of pressure and strain on the marriage, having to manage everything while also managing the relationship.
That's interesting. First time I've heard of it.
Any other questions? Yes, for sure. And then, I mean, now you can see why this whole experience has definitely been a test, because when it came to, you know, making sure that Jace was getting what they needed and things like that, me and my husband had to be a unified front. Mind you, my husband is my husband, but he's not the father of my children. So this is his first time being in a parenting experience. He's been doing great, but it's a lot of, you know, like, babe, this is what you have to say. Like, we have to be unified, not only with our children, but also facing things like literally it's me and him against the world. Like, that's really it. You know, we definitely have to be on the same page when it comes to discipline for the kids, you know, just things like that. And of course, that happens through communication. But I will say I'm happy because me and him are going to New Orleans next week to get some much, much, much needed husband and wife time. So I'm just really, really happy about that. I'm counting the days.
Me too. No, I'm just.
Sure.
Hey, well, this has been a pleasure. Before we wrap it up, or does anyone have any other questions? If not, I'll get you.
Mika has questions.
Mika has a
I have
question.
one more question.
Don't ask about no husband and wife time.
Well, minus the husband and wife time.
No.
So you and your husband do not have kids together, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So when you met your husband, how do you meet someone and then, you know, introduce them to your kids or let them know that you have autistic kids? And you know what I'm saying? Because like,
yes.
my manager, she keeps talking about, she's single, and
Okay.
she wants to be married or whatever, but she feel like she will not be able to find anybody due to her daughter. And I just don't see where that's true. So how did you handle that with your husband?
So one of the things that I did, so there's a taboo, especially in our community, against mothers. They say, oh, don't bring that guy around your kids. Don't bring that guy around your kids. But well, when me and my husband were dating, well, before we got married, when we were dating, we dated for about 6 months. And then at that 6-month mark, I was like, okay, I like him, but I need to see if my kids like him, because my kids are going to be here, you know? And during that time, this was over a year ago now, we didn't have all the information that we have now, but I was very open and honest with him about the fact that I do have kids and my kids do have behavioral challenges. We didn't know what to call it then, but I was honest with him about that. And he's like, you know, I come from a big family. Like, I have siblings. There's nothing that I can't handle. And I remember when Jace went into the hospital, Jace actually called him dad. That's not something that we said to Jace, like, hey, you need to call him dad because he's your stepdad. Jace did that on his own. And then my son, Stefan, actually did that recently. So he has definitely stepped up and really fulfilled that role. But again, that comes with being open and honest from upfront. So anyone who's single or desiring to marry or whatever the situation is, being open and honest about who you are and what you're bringing into the relationship is important. Just be open. If they cannot deal with that, or if they say anything off the wall when you bring that up, then that's not the person for you. Because based on my testimony, there are men out here who will step up and do what they need to do, you know? So if that person is like, oh no, that's too much for me, that's too much to deal with, okay, no problem, have a nice day. That's how we handle that. So just being upfront and honest about your situation is going to help you out significantly, because you'll know who really loves you or who really likes you enough to, work with you through that. for sure.
Okay, thank you. I will share that with her.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
All right. So, Kayla, where can we find you again before we wrap up?
Okay, so I'm on Facebook at Kayla Newbern. Again, that's where I offer a lot of my social commentary. So that's more for like socially. But if you want to, if you know somebody, or if you just want to tell somebody about the amazing things that my program is doing, you can actually find me at www.cdtutoring.com. I'm on Instagram at cdtutoring. I'm on Twitter at cdtutoring. I'm on Facebook at Common Denominators University. Please, please, please don't hesitate to refer. There's an incentive for you if you do that. But also, again, there are so many students right now who are not getting what they need. Our students are even more behind than other students. And by our students, I mean Black students. We're more behind than other students as a result of COVID. Think about it. A lot of kids really lost a year of education, and we're even more behind. So please don't hesitate to refer people my way. If I'm not a good fit, I will find a good fit for them, because I really am passionate about helping all kids.
Thank you so much for going under the scope today. Another amazing episode in the books, everyone. We will be back again next Saturday. It's just, March has been fabulous, y'all. We have been jam-packed working through Under the Scope. And I just want to thank everyone again for attending Under the Scope. If it wasn't for you, there'll be no me. And you are my special guest as well. You are good mental health care advocates as well. So just go out there and spread the words. Tell them about the show, y'all. Subscribe to the show on YouTube also, please. Help me go viral. But all right, so I'll be back here. We'll be back here next week with Sherry Brown. She's talking about her book, Prayer Closet Chronicles. Under the Scope, I'm your host, Kimberlon T, and this is where good tea and reads are welcome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.